Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. Today we're going to deviate a little bit. We were going to discuss the second minicamp practice, but Brian Dable gave the boys a little bit of time, and they made it a very light practice. There was not too much to discuss there. There were a few things that we're going to start on really quickly before we get into the crux of what today's show is. And today's show is going to be the 5 things we can't wait to watch more of in Giants training camp. So this will be on the offensive side of the ball. Next week, we'll probably do something very similar on the defensive side of the ball. But we're going to discuss those things that we need to see, that we want to see, that will ultimately define the Giants season. But before we do that, Nick, I want to discuss with you a few things from the mini camp, though. Again, light practice, not too much to discuss on the practice end. But the starting and most important thing is Giants cornerback tryout, Trey Herndon, made a nice play today on a Tommy DeVito deflected pass. Again, taking him to the house, the rest of the defense chasing him, cheering him on, and then chasing him and cheering him on. And then after it was announced that the Giants have signed Herndon to a deal, Trey Herndon might have a shot to play this season. Obviously, the Giants liked him enough to sign him, and he's made plays in both of the minicamp practices.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The Giants need help at cornerback. Trey Herndon has played, I think, 6 years for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Inside and outside guy, has over 1,500 snaps, both inside and out. And the Giants might need an inside or an outside guy. So it's good to have that kind of versatility. And I'm glad that he's already making plays this early in camp.
Yep, I'm with you on that. They could use the versatility, they could use the experience, especially. I mean, I thought in my mind, there's been times over the past where the Giants have kind of just trotted into the season with inexperienced corners playing important roles. That happened with Trey Hawkins last year. It's happened in the past with Corey Ballantyne. It's happened with several corners. The Giants have tried to, let's throw him into the fire, see how it works. I'd kind of rather get the experienced guy in there, someone who's played snaps in the NFL, has faced some of these wide receivers, has some scouting reports, has the lowdown on how to win in the NFL at the cornerback position instead of trying to learn on the fly. So I'm excited about that. Some interesting comments I thought from Art Stapleton. I don't know if you saw these, Nick. I wanted to discuss these with you about Evan Neal, how the Giants have kind of backed off on his recovery from ankle surgery. And, what Art said was, we don't have any real information on this injury, but if it lingers into training camp, he thinks that we're going to eventually see Jermaine Illuminor move back to right tackle and then have Aaron Stinney step up and play at left guard. So he says they're not there yet, the Giants. Obviously, this is not their plan. They've still been playing Illuminor at guard. But he's like, let's give it 6 weeks until we get to camp, because in his mind, Art's mind, Illuminor's ability to bounce outside from left guard or inside from left guard to the outside will be no issue for him, given his experience in the NFL. And he said Stinney has starts at left guard in the league. So he thinks he will be the natural plan, obviously, with Zudu practicing at right tackle there. And a little bit of a report on this, Nick, before we get into your thoughts on that. According to the Daily News, Evan Neal is just simply following the rehab recommendations of the surgeon who operated on his fractured left foot late last season. He says the number 7 overall pick's distance from the team during practice has recently stood out, whatever that means. Why it's a must to continue monitoring this key player, and that was from the Daily News. So just some interesting insight on the Evan Neal situation. I feel like we've been kind of left in the dark there. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I do. It seems like the Giants might be done with Josh Ezeudu inside, and they really just want to put him at guard, because why else would you have him operate in that area? Look, you say Jermaine Illuminor, he can play left guard or right tackle, and he can alternate between the two, and it's no problem or no issue. I guess you can also weigh in the fact that they may feel comfortable that Evan Neal will be there in training camp, and this is just a contingency plan. But it does seem like to me the Josh Ezeudu inside experiment, after they added 3 potential 4, if you want to include Schlottman, interior offensive linemen, that they prefer him to just be the swing tackle, and they hope that he can seize that as a right tackle now, whereas last year was left tackle and it was left guard. So this guy's just been bounced around a bunch at this point.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have 2 things I want to hone in on here. The first is Ezeudu, since you mentioned it. I felt like, given his skill set and what we saw in his rookie season before all the injuries, he really was a better fit inside as a guard. But he obviously has movement skills. He obviously has pop on contact. These are 2 things that could theoretically make him a good right tackle, a good swing tackle. What I'm concerned with is the issues we saw as a rookie in pass protection, and then obviously last season before the injury at left tackle, which is kind of not his fault, thrown into the fire. Maybe the hope is you get training camp, you get mini camp to work at tackle, you improve. But To me, that's more of just like wishful thinking, Nick, because we've seen too many times in the NFL these reps not be worth as much as people claim them to be or as much as people assume them to be. These practice reps, these minicamp reps, even these training camp reps. It's not a developmental league. Offensive linemen really develop on their own or through game experience. And so I don't know how comfortable I'm going to be, Nick, if he is the swing tackle. I'm curious why they've moved him off the guard plan. I think a lot of it has to do with the additions of John Runyon and Jermaine Illuminor, and that's fine. Maybe they're looking to find a home for him and they feel like it's too crowded at guard and it's not as crowded as a tackle, because that's true. It is not as crowded at tackle. But I'm concerned with this plan because I don't necessarily know if I believe Josh Ezeudu can be a swing tackle for them and can be confidently put into games and pass protect. And that's still the most important job of either tackle, right or left. So that concerns me to start. It is what it is. I trust the coaches. They obviously see something. And again, maybe it has to do with the depth at the inside interior position. On the other front, tackle, I do feel confident Illuminor could just step right in and play right tackle if Neal's injury lingers and if he can't play in camp. And then it's looking like, oh, week one, Neal might be on the PUP list, something like that, which all just speculation at this point. But say it happens, Nick. But the one thing the Giants would be losing in that scenario is something they've preached as being important and we know is important, which is the continuity and the chemistry on the offensive line. Because now you're taking a guy who was playing in the left guard position. He's playing next to Andrew Thomas and John Michael Schmitz. And now he's playing all the way out on the edge at right tackle next to Runyon. It's just a different scenario there, and it's a different group and a different chemistry. You obviously move Stinney then inside the guard at that point because, again, we're not assuming Ezeudu would be in the mix for that. So it's interesting, man. I just hope that it all kind of works itself out with Neal just being ready for camp, right? and then we don't have to worry about it as much.
Well, dude, now that the Giants also have a realistic plan where you could put Jermaine or Illuminor in there and it's not Josh Ezeudu. Josh Ezeudu is going to be the swing one. So you have Illuminor in place. But if Evan Neal is late to camp, do the Giants say we're just going to rock with Illuminor, or will they just go with Evan Neal when he is healthy? I'd imagine they would go with Evan Neal, but then Evan Neal is getting even a slower start at that point at a position that he struggled to adapt to at right tackle. And if we get a couple weeks into the season, Dan, and Evan Neal, he's still getting beat around the edge, that lack of confidence, like how long will it take until the Giants are like, we got to try this guy out inside and just put Illuminor? Like there's a lot of different scenarios that can play out.
Right. And that's it's like I'm not sure that the plan even is that. I think the plan, I'm hoping that's the plan, right? Because I feel more confident with a scenario where it's like Illuminor at right tackle. And even if it's not Neal at left guard, if they're just done with Neal and they put Stinney in there, fine. I still feel better about that than the idea of, oh, if Neal's struggling or hurt or whatever, let's put Ezeudu out there at right tackle. That doesn't inspire any kind of confidence in me whatsoever. I want to have hope that Ezeudu can develop as a pass protector on the outside as a tackle, but that's just like wishful thinking. It's like saying all these other things. It's like saying, oh, Azeez Ujulari is going to have a breakout year. Well, I want to believe he can, but and the role suggests that maybe he can, but because he's going to have, not be on the field as much. But again, it's wishful thinking at this point because we haven't really seen it, honestly. So yeah, man, it's interesting what's going on on the offensive line. It seems like, why can't we have a team like the Eagles where there's no questions about the offensive line? They're just trotting it out there. You don't even have to talk about it. It's going to be top 5 one day. Hopefully the Giants can get to that point, Nick.
The Giants have drafted to suggest that they should be at that point. 2 top 10 picks at tackle. Not a lot of teams have 2 top 10 picks invested into both of their tackle positions. The Giants do, and here we are still. At least Andrew Thomas was a massive hit.
Yeah, you're right. And they hit one at least, and hopefully this will be it. We should come out of this year a minimum of 2. One of Evan Neal or JMS needs to hit this year, or we're going to start to look at this regime in a different way. And that's just fair. That's just how it goes. JMS, yeah, I've said before, you need 3 years to truly evaluate a rookie. I do not agree with that on the interior offensive line, especially with a top 55 pick at center. You can't be investing those kind of picks, and he can't be a bottom half center. It's just not a position, in my opinion, where you can do it at. It's an interesting pick when you make it, when you go top 55 at that position. In my opinion, it has to hit pretty early because it's not a position that teams usually invest in that early, and you should be getting a really good talent at that spot that can get involved and be a good, productive, above average player as early as year 2. So that's my expectation, at least for JMS. Neal, we might just be done on, obviously, Nick. I think we're willing to accept that at this point. He may be a bust. I'm not saying he is, but that's at least worth considering at this point.
But stability on the offensive line is crucial, because what was the best year of Will Hernandez's career with the New York Giants?
It was the
It was his
first year. Yeah.
rookie season, right? And we were actually like, oh, look, we got a guy. It
Yeah,
wasn't
he looked
maybe
good.
as great as we would have hoped, but we were optimistic. And then it was just downhill after that because the entire offensive line was just, it was not a stable unit at all. I think bringing in Runyon and Illuminor at least helps stabilize, and even Stinney to some degree helps stabilize all those other positions, and that can hopefully unlock John Michael Schmitz's skill set.
Yep, I agree with that, by the way. That's why the continuity factor is so important that we were discussing earlier. If you can keep Illuminor at left guard and Runyon at right guard and lock them in, and Neal is just playing, and playing well, then you may have a better chance of seeing the breakout from John Michael Schmitz, which is also why, Nick, I'm not going to be surprised, and I know fans are going to be pissed, if Neal takes some time or he's injured or he's not playing well, if they just put Azudu at right tackle with the idea of let's keep Illuminor and Runyon locked into those guard spots to make things really good on the interior there, right? Like you have an interior of JMS, Runyon, Illuminor, and they're working together, they're playing together all the time, not a lot of movement inside, the same guys. So it won't surprise me if they sacrifice a little bit maybe at right tackle for that, but still doesn't make me feel all that comfortable knowing Josh Azudu will be pass protecting on the right side. But it is what it is. Let's hope Evan Neal can just do this thing.